Welcome to Briefing 3 of 6 of the CipherVibe Cybersecurity for Beginners course. Today, we will make Beyond SolarWinds, supply chain attacks in 2026 understandable, practical, and connected to the rest of your learning path. The modern software supply chain attack seeks a trusted distribution path that can reach many downstream environments with authentic-looking artifacts. Recent campaigns show that valid signatures or provenance can attest that a compromised workflow built an artifact, not that the source and build intent were trustworthy. The purpose of this lesson is not to memorize a collection of terms. It is to build a mental model you can apply when tools, platforms, and threats change. We will define the core ideas, walk through a repeatable defensive workflow, examine mistakes that frequently mislead beginners, design useful safeguards, and finish with a safe portfolio exercise. Throughout the course, remember that security work begins with authorization, scope, and evidence. Use the exercises only on local systems you own or environments you have explicit written permission to assess. Pause when you need to. Write concepts in your own words, record observations, and distinguish what the evidence proves from what you are merely assuming. That habit is more valuable than rushing through another tool demonstration. Start with 4 concepts that provide the vocabulary for Beyond SolarWinds, supply chain attacks in 2026. First, source integrity, build integrity. Artifact integrity, dependency integrity, and release authorization are separate trust decisions. Second, CI runners hold high-value tokens, cloud credentials, package publishing permissions, signing access, and repository secrets that turn workflow compromise into lateral movement. Third, immutable commit identifiers and locked dependencies reduce tag mutation and surprise updates, but do not validate every action executed inside the pinned code. Fourth, reproducible builds, isolated builders, sign provenance, policy verification, and independent rebuilds create evidence across different failure domains. Do not study these as isolated definitions. Ask which asset or business service is involved, where the relevant trust boundary sits, which identity performs the action, and what reliable evidence would show that the control worked. Security reasoning is a chain. Source evidence supports an observation. The observation supports a conclusion. The conclusion informs a proportionate decision. The decision has an owner, an expected result, and a way to verify it. When any link is missing, say so. A professional explanation can include uncertainty without becoming vague. For example, a network record may prove that 2 addresses communicated, but it may not prove which human initiated the action or whether the content was malicious. Use diagrams whenever a relationship is difficult to explain in a sentence. Mark identities, systems, data flows, boundaries, and controls. A simple, accurate diagram is more useful than a crowded picture that implies knowledge you do not have. Now turn the mental model into a repeatable workflow. First, the attacker steals a maintainer token, compromises a workflow dependency, abuses a pull request trigger, or modifies a release repository. Second, the build environment executes attacker-controlled logic and exposes secrets, cloud credentials, signing material, or package publishing authority. Third, a malicious artifact is published through a trusted account or pipeline, sometimes carrying apparently valid provenance generated by the compromised process. Fourth, downstream automation installs the package or action at scale, and post-install scripts or runtime behavior steal additional credentials and propagate. Fifth, responders must trace source commits, workflow definitions, runner images, attestations, registry events, downstream deployments, and every exposed secret. Before acting, define the objective, scope, owner, and success condition. Collect the smallest amount of trustworthy evidence needed to understand the situation. Preserve timestamps and sources so another person can follow your reasoning. Priorities should be explainable. Consider exposure, identity and privilege, sensitive data, business importance, exploit conditions, existing safeguards, reversibility, and confidence. A dramatic label should never replace that analysis. The workflow does not end when a command succeeds, a ticket closes, or a dashboard turns green. Verify the new state with fresh evidence. Check for recurrence and for side effects introduced by the change. Document the result in plain language: what you observed, what you concluded, what you changed, who approved it, what evidence confirms the outcome, and what uncertainty remains. This disciplined loop, observe, interpret, decide, act, verify, and learn, appears in every cybersecurity specialty. Understanding failure modes will protect you from attractive but unreliable shortcuts. First, treating a signature as proof of safety ignores whether the signer, build environment, or release authorization was compromised. Second, pinning only top-level actions leaves transitive dependencies, container tags, downloaded scripts, and package manager hooks mutable. Third, long-lived, broadly scoped CI tokens turn a single workflow flaw into cross-repository and cloud compromise. Fourth, alerting only on known malicious package names misses legitimate packages taken over through maintainer or automation credentials. Fifth, rebuilding systems without rotating every exposed credential lets the attacker retain access after artifacts are removed. These mistakes often share one cause: confusing an available signal with a complete explanation. A tool can report a finding, a successful action, or a score while important scope, context, ownership, and verification remain missing. Avoid absolute claims. Words such as secure, compromised, fixed, and compliant require scope and evidence. Prefer precise statements such as, "This control blocked the tested path under these conditions," or "The available records show this identity used the service," but do not identify the human operator. Also resist copying commands without understanding their inputs, outputs, permissions, and side effects. Run one controlled change at a time and record what happened. If an exercise does not behave as expected, that is useful evidence. Stop, inspect the environment, revise the hypothesis, and explain the difference. Good security work is not a performance of certainty, it is careful reasoning under imperfect information. Reliable security uses layers because no single control can prevent every failure. First, use least privileged short-lived workload identity for CI, separate build from release authority, and restrict secrets by repository, environment, and branch. Second, pin actions and dependencies immutably, review workflow changes, isolate untrusted pull requests, and prevent forked code from reaching protected secrets. Third, generate signed provenance in hardened builders and verify source, builder identity, parameters, dependencies, and policy, not merely signature validity. Fourth, adopt reproducible or independently rebuilt artifacts for critical dependencies and compare results across separate infrastructure. Fifth, maintain rapid credential rotation, package quarantine, dependency inventory, downstream notification, and forensic retention procedures. For each important risk, ask 5 questions. What makes the event less likely? What evidence would reveal it? Who can contain it? How will trustworthy operation be restored? Who owns the decision and accepts remaining risk? Least privilege applies to people, applications, devices, automation, data stores, and administrators. Access should be scoped, separated, monitored, reviewed, and removed when it is no longer needed. Every important control needs a test strategy. Include representative normal activity, negative cases, misuse, dependency failure, and rollback. A written policy is not evidence that a technical or operational control works. Design for humans. A safeguard that is impossible to use correctly will be bypassed. Provide safe defaults, understandable messages, usable recovery, and clear escalation. Finally, preserve the evidence trail from observation through decision, action, and verification. That history supports investigations, audits, lessons learned, and honest measurement. Turn this briefing into an action plan. First, inventory every workflow with write, release, package, cloud, or signing authority. Second, replace standing CI secrets with short-lived identity and remove unnecessary workflow permissions. Third, enforce immutable references and policy review for actions, containers, packages, and build scripts. Fourth, pilot independent rebuilds and provenance verification for the most widely deployed components. Fifth, exercise a malicious release response that includes downstream discovery and complete credential rotation. Make the work measurable. Useful indicators for this topic include privileged workflows inventoried, standing CI secrets eliminated, immutable dependencies enforced, provenance policies verified, and malicious release containment time. Define the owner, source, review frequency, and limitation for every measure. Do not treat a product purchase or a single patch as completion. Retest the end-to-end trust path, preserve evidence, and track exceptions until the risk is demonstrably reduced. The broader lesson is that modern security failures cross layers: identity, software, infrastructure, hardware, operations, and governance. Defenders need an architecture that remains trustworthy when one layer fails. For the primary source links and chapter markers, open the description. For more evidence-based cybersecurity research, visit CipherVibe.com/news and subscribe to CipherVibe. CipherVibe is operated by CloudSecTech LLC. Copyright 2026. All rights reserved. This briefing is general education. Never test a system without explicit written authorization.